The calm before the storm never lasts long at Heartland. The wind carries whispers across the ranch of love tested, secrets unspoken, and choices that could change everything. The horses sense it first, their restless eyes reflecting the tension that's building. Something is coming, and this time, no one at Heartland is truly ready for it. The peace they fought so hard to keep is about to be shaken by the truth that's been hiding in plain sight. The sun rises slowly over the Heartland ranch, painting the sky in soft gold and pink. The fields look calm, but there's a strange quiet in the air, the kind that comes before something big happens. Amy stands by the fence, her hand resting on the horse's mane, her eyes far away. She's thinking about the last few days, the words left unsaid, and the feeling that life at the ranch is shifting in ways she can't yet understand. The sound of hooves in the distance brings her back to the moment. But even that sound feels different now, heavier, almost warning her that change is close. Lou walks out of the barn, her face calm, but her heart full of questions. She's been trying to hold the family together, making choices that don't always feel right but seem necessary. There's a decision waiting for her, one that could protect the ranch or tear it apart. Jack watches them both from the porch, his weathered eyes full of understanding. He knows these moments well, the ones that test strength, love, and loyalty. He doesn't say much, but his silence says more than words ever could. In the distance, the sound of thunder rolls through the hills. It's not just the weather changing, it's everything. The ranch, once a symbol of peace and unity, now feels caught between past promises and future fears. Amy takes a deep breath, whispering to herself that she can handle whatever comes next, but deep down she isn't sure. The memory of her mother, of all the lessons she learned about courage and trust, echoes in her mind. Sometimes she thinks the hardest part isn't the storm itself, it's waiting for it to arrive. As the morning light grows stronger, so does the tension. The horses move restlessly in the paddock, their energy reflecting the uncertainty that fills the air. Lou tries to distract herself with chores, but her thoughts keep circling back to one thing, the letter she found the night before. It wasn't meant for her, but now she can't forget the words she read. Words that could change everything for the family, and for Amy most of all. She hides it away, pretending it doesn't matter. But she knows she's lying to herself. Jack lights the old lantern on the porch, even though it's daylight. It's his quiet ritual, a sign that no matter how dark things get, there's always light to hold on to. He's seen enough storms in his life to know that this one won't be easy. He looks out across the fields, his heart heavy but steady. Somewhere deep inside, he knows that Heartland will endure, just as it always has. But he also knows that when the truth comes out, it will leave marks no rain can wash away. The wind picks up again, carrying the scent of rain and something else, something uncertain. Amy turns to look at Lou, who quickly looks away. That single glance says everything: secrets, guilt, fear, but also love. The kind of love that keeps them together, even when everything seems to be falling apart. The camera would linger on Amy's face for a moment, calm, strong, and yet full of emotion before fading to black, leaving the audience holding their breath for what comes next. The rain never came that morning, but the sky stayed heavy and gray, as if it was waiting for the right moment to break. Amy walked toward the stables, each step echoing softly on the damp ground. She didn't know what she was looking for, maybe peace, maybe distraction, but every corner of Heartland seemed to hold a memory she wasn't ready to face. Ty's laughter, her mother's voice, the sound of Jack calling the horses in at dusk. It all lived here, stitched into the soil and air. And yet, something felt off, like a note in a song that no longer sounded the same. Lou was already inside, brushing down one of the horses. Her movements were sharp, almost mechanical, the way people move when they're trying not to think. Amy watched her for a moment before speaking, her voice low and unsure. "You've been quiet lately," she said softly. Lou smiled, but it wasn't real. "Just tired," she replied. But Amy knew her sister better than that. There was something behind her eyes, worrying, fear, maybe even regret. They stood there in silence for a while, both pretending to be busy. Outside, the wind pushed against the barn doors, rattling them gently. It wasn't angry yet, just restless, like the feeling in Amy's chest. She tried to shake it off, focusing on the horses, on the rhythm of her breathing. But the questions wouldn't leave her alone. Why did Lou seem distant? Why did Jack keep watching them like he knew something they didn't? And why did the air around the ranch feel so full of secrets? Jack, meanwhile, sat inside the house by the window, the letter Lou had hidden now resting in his hand. He'd found it that morning, by accident, or maybe fate. The old man's eyes scanned the words slowly, each sentence cutting deeper. It wasn't just about the ranch, it was about the past, a truth buried long ago that was now finding its way to the surface. He leaned back in his chair, the floor creaking under him, and let out a long sigh. He'd promised Marion once that he'd always protect this family. But what happens, he thought, when protecting them means keeping them in the dark? By midday, the clouds had thickened. The horses were uneasy, pacing in their pens. Georgie arrived from town, her face pale and her voice shaky. She brought news, the kind that twists your stomach before you even hear it all. Someone had been asking questions about Heartland, about old property deals, about names that hadn't been spoken in years. Amy listened, her hands frozen in place. Lou went still too, and Jack's silence deepened. The past, it seemed, wasn't done with them. Later, as the sun tried to break through the clouds, Amy sat alone by the creek. The water moved slowly, carrying leaves and tiny reflections of light. She thought about everything, about how quickly peace can turn into confusion, how trust can slip away quietly without anyone noticing. She remembered her mother's words, "The truth always rides with the wind, Amy. You can't stop it, but you can face it." Maybe that's what this was, the truth finally finding its way back home. In the house, Lou stood by the window, the letter now gone from its hiding place. She realized Jack must have found it, and her heart pounded. She wasn't angry, just afraid of what came next. She'd read those words over and over, trying to make sense of them, trying to believe they couldn't be true. But deep down, she knew they were. And if Amy ever found out, everything could change, not just for them, but for Heartland itself. Evening began to fall, and the sky turned to deep ember. The first drops of rain finally fell, soft and slow, like the beginning of something that couldn't be stopped. Jack stepped outside, letting the rain touch his face. He whispered something only the wind could hear, a quiet prayer or a promise, maybe both. Inside, Amy and Lou sat at the table, neither speaking. The distance between them felt wider than ever. Even though they were just a few feet apart, the rain grew stronger, the wind louder. And with every gust, it felt like Heartland itself was preparing for what was coming, a storm that wasn't just in the sky, but in their hearts. The kind of storm that changes everything, even after it passes. The storm came without warning. The wind tore across the open fields, bending trees and shaking windows. The rain, once soft and gentle, now fell hard and fast, like the sky itself was releasing all the tension that had been building for days. The horses whinnied from their stalls, hoofs pounding the ground in panic. Amy ran toward the barn, her jacket clinging to her in the downpour. Every drop of rain stung like a memory she couldn't escape. The world around her felt alive, wild, unpredictable, and full of truth she was no longer able to ignore. Inside, Lou was trying to calm one of the horses, her voice trembling but steady. Amy rushed in, water dripping from her hair, eyes sharp with fear and frustration. For a moment, they worked side by side in silence, the thunder rolling above them. But silence never lasts long when there's something unspoken between two sisters. Amy turned to Lou, her voice breaking. "Tell me what's going on," she demanded. "You've been hiding something." "I can feel it." Lou froze. Her hands fell still. The storm outside had finally found its echo inside the barn. Lou tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Her mind raced, searching for a way to protect Amy, to protect the family. But Amy wasn't a child anymore. She could see the truth in Lou's eyes, the guilt, the hesitation. "Please, Amy whispered. No more lies. Lou's lips trembled as she finally said it. It's about Mom. And the ranch. The words hung heavy in the air, swallowed by the sound of thunder. Amy stared at her sister, her heart pounding. What about Mom? She asked, her voice barely holding together. Lou didn't answer. Instead, she turned away, tears mixing with the rain that had found its way through the barn roof. Outside, Jack stood under the porch, watching the storm with a heavy heart. He could hear their voices through the wind, muffled but sharp. He knew this moment was coming. He'd spent years hoping it never would. The letter, the truth it carried, it wasn't just a secret. It was a wound, one that had been kept closed for too long. His hands gripped the railing, knuckles white. He wanted to protect them both, but he also knew that truth, no matter how painful, had to come out someday. Heartland was built on honesty, on love, and both of those things were being tested now that Amy left the barn, unable to breathe under the weight of what she'd heard. The rain poured harder, soaking her as she ran through the fields. She didn't care where she was going. She just needed space to think, to scream, to remember. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, smiling, calm, full of love. But now even that memory felt different, uncertain. Could everything she believed about her family, her home, her past, be built on something she never knew? Lou followed after her, calling her name through the storm. Her voice cracked, carried away by the wind. She tripped in the mud, but got up again, desperate to reach her sister. Amy, please, she shouted. But Amy didn't stop. She reached the old oak tree near the edge of the property, the one where she and Ty had carved their initials years ago. She leaned against it, crying, the storm washing over her. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered into the wind, but there was no answer. Only thunder. Only rain. Back at the house, Jack stood by the window, the lantern flickering beside him. He saw the two sisters out in the storm, broken silhouettes against the lightning. His heart ached. He knew he had to go to them, but he also knew that this was something they needed to face together. Sometimes love means stepping back, even when every part of you wants to step in. He whispered a quiet prayer, the kind that comes from deep in the soul. Let them find each other again, he said. Let this storm pass. As the lightning cracked across the sky, Amy and Lou finally came face to face again. Lou's voice trembled as she spoke the truth. She told her everything about the letter, about the deal their mother made to save the ranch, about the promise that changed everything they thought they knew. Amy listened, her expression shifting from disbelief to heartbreak to something deeper, understanding. The storm raged around them, but inside that chaos, something broke open. The pain, the anger, the love, it all poured out, raw and real. The wind began to die down, the rain slowing to a soft drizzle. Lou reached for Amy's hand, unsure if she'd pull away. But Amy didn't. She stood there, breathing heavily, eyes filled with tears and forgiveness. We'll get through this, she said quietly. We always do. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Lou smiled, a small, fragile smile, but real. The storm had broken, but maybe, just maybe, it had washed something clean. Morning came slowly, as if the world itself was tired from the storm. The sky was pale and soft, painted with streaks of gold and silver. The air smelled of wet grass and clean earth, the kind of air that makes you feel like you've been given a second chance. Amy stood at the edge of the field, the same place where the storm had found her the night before. Her boots were still muddy, her hair damp, but her eyes were clear. She watched the horses grazing quietly, their calm movements bringing peace back to her heart. For the first time in days, she could breathe without the weight of secrets pressing against her chest. Inside the house, Lou sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. She hadn't slept much. Her thoughts kept circling around the truth she had finally shared. It felt like a wound reopened, painful, but strangely freeing. Jack entered the room quietly, his old boots leaving faint prints on the floor. He didn't say anything at first. He just poured himself a cup and sat across from her. They didn't need words. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, honest. Finally, Jack looked up and said softly, "You did the right thing." Lou nodded, her eyes shining. "I just hope she believes that." Out in the fields, Amy walked slowly toward the barn. The sun was climbing higher now, turning the drops of water on the grass into tiny diamonds. Everything felt different, not fixed, not perfect, but real. She ran her hand along the fence, feeling the rough wood, the steady heartbeat of the land she loved. This place had seen storms before. It had seen loss, love, heartbreak, and healing. Heartland wasn't just a ranch. It was a promise, one that lived through every challenge and every generation. Georgie joined her a few minutes later, carrying a small towel and a smile that tried to hide her worrying. "Lou said you might want to talk," she said gently. Amy smiled back, shaking her head. "Not yet," she replied. "I just need a little more time." They stood together in silence, watching the horses move freely again. The air buzzed softly with life, birds returning to the trees, water dripping from the roof, wind brushing through the grass. Everything that had felt broken yesterday now seemed to be finding its place again. Lou stepped out of the house, the morning light catching her face. She looked toward Amy, her heart full of both fear and love. She wanted to go to her, to explain more, to apologize again, but before she could, Amy turned and started walking toward her. No words were needed. They met halfway, the space between them closing as easily as breathing. Lou's eyes filled with tears, but Amy just smiled, that small, familiar smile that said everything was going to be all right. Jack watched from the porch, leaning on the old railing that had held him through so many moments like this. He smiled too, though his eyes were wet. "That's my girls," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Behind him, the light from the lantern still flickered faintly, even though the sun was already shining. It was a reminder that light doesn't disappear just because the dark comes. It waits, it endures. Later that day, the ranch came back to life. The storm had passed, and the sky was wide open, endless and blue. Amy saddled up her horse, the leather creaking softly under her hands. She looked across the field, where Lou and Jack stood watching her. For a moment, everything was still, the kind of stillness that comes after truth, after tears, after forgiveness. She took a deep breath and smiled, then nudged her horse forward. The camera would follow her as she rode across the open land. Sunlight catching in her hair, wind brushing her face. Freedom returning with every step. The narrator's voice would come softly here, reflective, full of warmth. At Heartland, storms don't just bring rain. They bring truth. They test what's real. But no matter how hard they hit, this family always finds their way back to love, to hope, to each other. The music would rise gently, a mix of piano and soft guitar, as the screen fades into the logo. Heartland Season 19. Episode 7, coming soon. A final whisper echoes with the sound of the wind. Every storm ends, but every ending is just another beginning.